I'm also kind of watching the College World Series on the side right here. But
who's playing right now?
Kentucky and Florida. I'm not updated on my bracket though, so I don't know. I'm sure this is an elimination game for someone. Speaking of baseball, did you see the Mets are 7-0 since Grimace threw out the first pitch?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
I love this superstitious part of baseball that it carries all the way to the MLB level.
Yeah.
Nobody's really superstitious, but they're all a little stitious.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to be wearing purple until they lose, and then they're just not going to be wearing it anymore.
Yeah, and they're going to have another, terrible second half of the season, and none of this is going to matter.
I don't want to change subjects too much real quick. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, off the helmet?
Sorry, I just saw that live while you were talking about that.
That's awesome.
I don't think I've ever seen that before. That's hilarious.
That's awesome.
Welcome to the Circus Catch.
I'm always up for the challenge.
Are you kidding me? Guess who called that one?
I am dubbed the Houston player hater. I don't have time to believe.
You got butthurt.
What is he thinking?
Is he the greatest of all time?
It is like magic.
It is the middle of June, and you know what that means. We have crowned a champion in the National Basketball Association, and it is the team with the most crowns in NBA history. The Boston Celtics are your NBA champions for the 2024 season. Welcome to the Circus Catch. My name is Jordan Wright. I am here with someone who is not happy about this crowning. Everyone, Mr. Austin Parr is joining me this morning. Austin, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, of course. I'm the biggest Celtic hater on the planet and the biggest Laker fan. So, of course, I got to show my face. I've already got, people sending me receipts of what I said on this exact podcast right when the Celtics won because they're Celtics fans, one being my brother and one being a fantasy football friend. So, got to come back on.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into it then. Let's talk about this season in general, what it meant for Boston, what it meant for the association. Boston did finish the season, Austin, with the best record in the NBA, not just in the Eastern Conference. They actually finished 7 games ahead of Oklahoma City and Denver. And I know all year we were talking about this tough Western Conference, OKC, Denver, Minnesota, even Dallas and Phoenix and the Lakers.
To go ahead and not only, beat everybody who's in front of you in the East, but dominate the West like that just goes to show you how dominant of a run this Celtics season was. Did they get enough credit? No, probably not, because the biggest topic of conversation was going to be, can they get it done in the postseason? Because Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown were the longest tenured duo in the playoffs before winning their first NBA title. It's over 100 wins, pretty crazy. So I think the biggest topic of conversation was like, none of this matters until they win a championship. And obviously, as Jason Tatum would say, what are they going to say now?
Yeah, it's to that point. Yeah, the Eastern Conference, pretty weak. They were ahead of the number 2 seed by 14 games. The 14, yeah, 14 games. The New York Knicks, who were also impressive in their own right, but the Celtics were just that much better, that much of a disparity in that conference. The Celtics won the Maurice Podoloff Trophy, if I'm saying that right. Do you know what that is?
I've never heard of that.
So it was first named the Maurice Podoloff Trophy in 2023. So it's basically the NBA's version of the President's Cup Trophy.
Got it.
So,
okay.
So that the inaugural season of that was last year. The Milwaukee Bucks won that. So we're already off to a better start as far as that goes in the NBA than we are in the NHL, because President's Trophy winner hardly ever wins. Yeah, very rare to win in this Stanley Cup. But that's what that's called, and I didn't know that until after I saw all the stats and all the accolades for Boston this year. All right, Austin. So the Celtics run this year to the Larry O'Brien Trophy started against the Miami Heat. We always love to see Miami-Boston, especially lately in the playoffs. Been a pretty big rivalry for about a dozen years now. pretty much since LeBron James was in Miami, and they always seem to face off against Boston. The thing about this series, though, is that none of those games were particularly close. Even the one where Boston won wasn't or where Miami won wasn't particularly close.
This is a very it's an interesting run from the Celtics, even starting from that first series with obviously Jimmy Butler getting hurt and not being a part of, that Miami Heat team. Here's the thing. Do I think that Boston would beat Miami with Jimmy Butler? Absolutely. Were the games going to be significantly different if Miami had Jimmy Butler? Maybe not. But the thing is Boston was so good that this series did not matter at all, whether Miami had Jimmy Butler or LeBron James, or it didn't matter. I mean, that's just how it was.
Yeah, no Jimmy Butler in this series. Bam Adebayo played pretty well, but he was really the only Heat that played good. Tyler Hero didn't elevate himself to that number 2 spot where he was needed. So I was a little disappointed in his play. Jaime Jaquez Jr., you can't really blame him. He's rookie, he's just getting his feet wet. The dude is going to be a future all-star, but just wasn't his year this year to be able to take the reins. Derek White, though, I remember in this series, he had a phenomenal, I think it was game 4. It was game 4, the 38-point game from Derek White. So just another weapon that the Celtics have that what are you going to do to defend every person on this team? You can't. All right. And then round 2 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Again, the Boston Celtics won this one in a gentleman's sweep, just like they did in the first round. Game 2 was the game that they lost, and it wasn't particularly close. So kind of a similar to that first round series. And you also have their biggest superstar go down, but he did play a little bit in this series.
Yeah, he did. The Celtics were weirdly not the best team at home, which is like such a weird stat because they have such a historical building they play in, obviously. And I think they got a little lackadaisical a couple of games during the playoffs, but what do they do every single time? They bounce back. And not only did they bounce back, they won both games on the road. I mean, that's just what an impressive championship style team does. I mean, yeah. And then same thing. Donovan Mitchell goes down. Jared Allen also doesn't play. Do I think that Boston will beat Cleveland with Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen? Absolutely. I think the series would have been a lot tighter for sure if Donovan Mitchell played the entire time and Jared Allen played the entire time. It would have been a lot closer, more of an entertaining series than it was. But still, Boston, better team, easily win that series.
Yeah, I think the difference being the Miami series, even if they had Jimmy Butler, I think the outcome would have been the exact same. I think that Cleveland definitely would have stretched their series had Spider Mitchell been playing the whole time, and if they had Jarrett Allen as well, who is a vastly underrated player, just been nothing but great since he went from Brooklyn to Cleveland. Didn't participate because obviously did get hurt in that Orlando series the round previous. But Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, when those are your top 2 guys, it's kind of hard to beat a team that's as stacked as the Celtics.
They're young too, and they'll be coming. They got some guys that are going to be future all-stars as well. But just the East is just kind of down right now. They still got about 3 dominant teams when they stay healthy, but the rest of the teams, you see, there's a lot of really talented players that are up and coming. But like you said, they're just getting their feet wet, and it's going to take a couple of years for them to get to that spot where they can, even compete or hang with a team like Boston, who's been doing it. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, what was it, 108 playoff games before they won their first championship? Like, that's a lot of playoff experience right there already. So
the most competitive round, strangely enough, it was the only sweep of the playoffs for Boston. But it was definitely the most competitive, and it was the hardest one for them to get through. And I say that because Indiana blew multiple leads in this series. The series easily could have gone 3-1 in favor of Indy if they hadn't given up those late leads. Game 1, we think about that overtime game, that overtime thriller. That was one of the best games I've ever seen in any playoff run ever. And then game 3 and game 4, also very late, Indiana had the lead and gave it up. So even though it was a sweep, I think it was the most competitive series in this playoff run for Boston.
Oh yeah, for sure. That was, and like you said, it was fun to watch. It was entertaining basketball. This is more so on the Pacers blowing this series than it is Boston winning this series, because let's not forget, Indiana was up 3 with the ball with a timeout in that first game. All Carlisle had to do was take a timeout, advance the ball to half court, draw up a play to get the inbound in. That's your job. Get the ball into the inbounds. Boston steals it. Jaylen Brown hits probably arguably to this point the biggest shot of his career, because obviously they won the championship this year. Phenomenal. Mentally, how do you recover like that when you're such a young team like Indiana is? We're going to talk about youth a lot in the Eastern Conference. Tyrese Halliburton's very, very young. Obi Toppin's a relatively young player still. They got a lot of young players in Indiana that could be some rising stars too. And we could be set up just to be seeing a little rivalry here brewing between Indiana and Boston. But yeah, entertaining basketball nonetheless. Same thing. Championship teams somehow pull it out when you don't think they're going to do it, and competitive series. But man, and then of course, Tyrese Halliburton going down, that didn't help, and we all knew the series was over after that. So
yeah, not a bad point though. If Indy can hang on, win game 1, Carlisle should have called that timeout. That was an all-time blunder by him. If they do that and win that first game, they probably feel a lot better about themselves. Series 1-1 going into Indy, they probably feel a lot more confident. Like you said, young guys, that has a big role to play in a series like that. So who knows? But that's neither here nor there. Didn't happen. Boston gets the sweep, moves on. Speaking of Indy, real quick, it is being reported that Pascal Siakam is going to sign a long-term deal with the Pacers to stay in Indiana.
interesting.
So we'll have that veteran presence on that team to help those young guys for many, many years. NBA Finals. So the last round, Dallas Mavericks. Don't want to spend too much time on the first 2 games because we did talk about those last week. We'll start with game 3, which was back in Dallas. And this team played much different when they went back home. Kyrie got it together. Luka played pretty good. Luka played pretty well, I should say. Proper English. And then in game 4, they just absolutely slaughtered them. So not even close. It was the 3rd biggest margin of victory in finals history, which is kind of strange considering that that's the only game Boston lost in that series. But Dallas played much better at home. We go back to Boston, game 5. Oh, the Kyrie sucks chance. That played a huge factor. Kyrie could not get it going. He got trapped every time he got the ball, every time he tried to get in the paint. Didn't know who to pass it to, couldn't find anybody, didn't even try to pass it. He looked like he was just shrinking out there, which is insane to me that he would have that much. He would allow them to get that much in his head. The man's in his 30s. He's not one of these young kids anymore. He's in his 30s. Get it together, bro. Come on.
You know what it reminded me of?
Remember
Space Jam?
I do.
Kyrie looked like one of the little miniature, Looney Tunes characters against the Monstars. He could not do anything, and he was absolutely wrapped up. And here's the thing. Maybe this is one of the reasons why Jaylen Brown got MVP. He played phenomenal defense all series long, and that's particularly in game 5. He did the same thing on Luka. He picked him up full court and got into his body and did not let him do anything that he wanted to. I think it was the second quarter, and Luka was like 2 for 9, 7 points. Boston was already ahead by 20. Like, it was just pounding defense. But yeah, Monstars, Mr. Kyrie. That's going to be a problem he's going to have to solve in the offseason. He might have to go see some shrinks or do something meditation-wise, because he clearly cannot play in Boston. I give a lot of flack to all the Bostonites and the, Bostonians and the Boston fans and the Boston sports teams, but 100% this was an impressive run by the Boston Celtics. One of the more dominant runs, not just in the postseason, because I know people are going to talk about the run they had and how easy it was. in the regular season, we talked about this earlier. They were dominant against the West. They were dominant against the East. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are here to stay. It's great for the game of basketball. It's great for this shift that we're having away from these previous superstars and bringing on these new superstars. Congratulations to the Boston Celtics. I knew you were going to do it all along. Just couldn't root for you. That's why I said Dallas in 6. But banner number 18, the most in NBA history. Pretty crazy.
I am now joined by Jackson, who is going to help me talk about the legacies left behind by this particular series and this particular year. Jackson, welcome to the show.
What's up, Jordan? Glad to be back.
Let's talk about these legacies, Jackson. I want to start with the player who had the most pressure on him in the series, and that would be Mr. Jason Tatum. After Jason Tatum won, obviously we saw Deuce come up, and everybody knows who Deuce is, right? Deuce is Jason Tatum's son. It's great watching some of these players have their kids grow up on TV with them as they're going throughout their career. We love the duo of Jason and Deuce. They've been waiting, we've been waiting, and now the Celtics have finally won with this regime. Jason Tatum, after the game, said, "What are they gonna say now?" Well, Jackson, let's say it now. What's going on with them? What are your impressions of Jason Tatum's legacy after this game?
You're a champion. People are still going to criticize you. The media is going to find any way to criticize you. We already know this. But for right now, you are a champion, and that's something to be proud of. And it's just one more step to get yourself into the Hall of Fame.
Certainly seems like he has the talent to go on that trajectory towards the Hall of Fame. Definitely has the potential. I want to talk about his leadership as well, because while he is a vocal leader of this team, he's not somebody that we've seen in the past, like a Kobe Bryant or a LeBron James or a Michael Jordan. Certainly not near that kind of talent level, in my opinion. But he hasn't been that kind of vocal leader. Not to question his leadership. I just want to put that out there that he's not going to be one of the greatest leaders of all time. In my opinion, I don't know. Maybe some Celtics fans are going to be mad at me for saying that. But here's what I would have to say. You had just mentioned Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown is the one who won the Eastern Conference Most Valuable Player, Eastern Conference Finals Most Valuable Player. He's also the one who won the NBA Finals Most Valuable Player, not the leader of the team, not Jason Tatum. Although if we look at the numbers, Jackson, Jason Tatum actually did have a better playoff run. He had more points. He averaged about 4 more rebounds a game. He averaged about 3 more assists a game. Do you think Jason Tatum is getting overlooked because of the success of Jaylen Brown?
Not necessarily. I just think that while Tatum had a little bit of a quieter, while we're talking about the statistics in general, but he did kind of have a little bit quieter Eastern Conference Finals, and except for Game 5, I think that it was a semi-quiet finals run. And while Jaylen Brown just looks like he's got that dog in him, as people would say, he is more, you can see that he just has more of that personality and more of that. He wears his emotions on himself a little bit more, that he has that fight where if you're looking at Tatum, it's more just a little bit kind of zen, in my opinion.
One other guy I do want to talk about, who was in the same draft class as Jason Tatum. He wasn't drafted 3rd. He was drafted 29th. That would be Mr. Derek White, the former San Antonio Spur. Derek White was an absolute gem and was such a phenomenal piece to this puzzle. He was a defensive juggernaut this year, but the contract situation might send him packing after this year. So again, we've got JB locked up. We've got JT, who has the player option for next year. I don't know if Derek White is a long-term solution, but he's definitely earned a new contract somewhere. So hats off to him. He had a heck of a series. His legacy is cemented going forward as an absolute dog. He was unbothered by his chipped tooth. He got basically, his head was on the floor and he just got slammed down harder, chipped his tooth. I don't know if you saw that. His smile was very crooked.
I was curious if we were going to mention the chipped tooth or not.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. What a dog. I don't know if I wouldn't be crying after that. That's why I'm not a professional ball player. But But yeah, the phone is definitely going to be ringing for him. Not this offseason, but next offseason. Celtics, do all you can to keep this man on board because he's an absolute stud. Jackson, a couple of those trades that Brad Stevens engineered this offseason really cemented the Celtics as the best team in the East by far. One of those being Kristaps Porzingis. When he came into the league, he was branded the unicorn. Not a lot of people really understood what kind of a talent he was, especially since he didn't really work out so much in New York. Wasn't as highly touted of a prospect as his career in Dallas showed. Not really much to speak about in Washington, but when he gets to Boston and he's not expected to be the guy, he's not even expected to be the number 2 guy, man, he really shined. And he comes back after injury in game 1. What an inspiration there. Comes back in game 5. This dude's going to be out for months rehabbing. We know that. He's going to be out for months rehabbing. And he decides to come back in game 5 and give it his all. Man, Kristaps Porzingis is not only for his talent, but for his grit, the definition of what it means to be a champion.
I agree with that 100%. The fact that you question like someone how bad do you want it? And the fact that coming back from his injury and still willing to play and even further risking, it could even potentially lead to, let's say, if it was worse, that it would be a career ending injury. But the fact that he wanted to be there and give it his all for the Celtics, and he's now a champion because of it. I can't, especially like you were talking about in game 1. The thing that was so crazy about this entire series on the Celtics side is that while, you had Porzingis with a phenomenal game 1, then you had Drew Holiday in game 2 just coming out of nowhere, who I'm just going to brag that was my X factor. I remember saying that before the final started. But then, Tatum in game 5, it's just everybody, you relied on like one person to step up. And that's why I still think about this being a well-rounded team, because they truly are. It's just any person is hot or is willing to do something. And that's what Kristaps Porzingis did in game 1. And the fact that now durability is going to be a huge question for him going forward. I don't think you can get a full 65 games a season out of him. But at the same time, when he's on the floor, he is a game changer.
I do want to talk a little bit about your X factor real quick, Drew Holiday. He was probably the difference in this playoff run, not just the series, but the playoff run. When the top guys didn't have it for Boston, we're talking Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, because both stars are going to be off some nights. Let's be honest, it does happen. Seemed to happen a decent amount in this playoffs, actually. Boston had a third option to step in and help, whereas Dallas did not. When Luka and Kyrie were off, they didn't have anyone with any kind of experience to help them out. Getting Drew Holiday, you get not only the veteran presence, but you also get the championship presence. So he was there. He knew what it took to win a championship. He did it just 3 years ago in Milwaukee, and he was a big part of that team that did it too. It wasn't just Giannis. Drew Holiday was a big part of that as well. He brought something that was intangible. Brad Stevens saw it. Joe Mazzulla coached it up. And there you go. You win the championship because of Drew Holiday. I think he made the big difference in that one.
And the fact that if it weren't for the Dame Lillard trade, that Drew Holiday would not have been in Boston. So you kind of have to thank Portland of all teams about going into this mix whenever it was to get Dame over to Milwaukee, to get Drew over there into Boston. Because we know how all these crazy trades happen in the NBA. But it's just crazy that Dame Lillard, you can kind of say, is a factor of why the Celtics won this championship.
One other player on the Celtics I do want to talk about real quick is Al Horford, Big Al. The first Dominican player to win the finals or to win a championship in the National Basketball Association. So congratulations to him. The big veteran, 17 years in the league, finally gets his first championship. I know his teammates were all excited for him, but it wasn't just them carrying him. He was a big part of this team. Similar to Drew Holiday, kind of that veteran presence, and just had a big impact on the younger players as well.
You saw a lot of Horford was doing a lot of, he was playing defense on Luka quite a bit. You saw the matchups and the fact that at his age, and he's younger than me, but the fact that you have a veteran with his NBA age still going up one-on-one against Luka, it's wild to think about. And the fact that, yes, it is awesome for Al Horford. He finally has an NBA championship. Could this potentially say that he is going to go to the NBA Hall of Fame? Because I believe he did win 2 NCAA championships. So was this going to cement him in the Naismith Hall of Fame?
I would lean yes, but it wouldn't shock me if he didn't, unfortunately. Not a lot of people get into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. It's very few and far between. We don't see these big giant gatherings like we do for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Baseball is even a little bit more rare, but basketball, you only send about 2 or 3, sometimes 4 or more guys a year, but usually only a couple. I want to talk about another 3rd overall pick, Jackson, but he actually played for the other team in this series, and his name is Luka Doncic. Originally drafted by the Atlanta Hawks and then traded on draft day, the whole Trae Young trade that happened with Atlanta to Dallas. So this was Luka Doncic's first finals experience in just a few years in the league. So he hasn't been around too long. The West has been pretty strong since he came in, probably even more so now. So his path to the finals is always going to be incredibly hard. I think his legacy is going to be fine. This was his first finals appearance. My only concern for him going forward is that strong Western Conference. How likely is he to get back there? I don't know. You got Denver, who is probably the favorite right now to repeat for next year, or to go back next year, sorry. Oklahoma City is going to have another year of experience under their belt. Minnesota is the best defensive team in the league right now. You got Phoenix that has some aging superstars, but some superstars. You know, LA. We're talking about the Lakers and the Clippers, actually. Both of those teams have a bunch of older, more savvy vets, and we'll see how it shakes up with them. I don't know that Dallas is going to get back anytime soon, if at all, during Luka's career.
Whenever he was on this big of a stage, it did not favor him as well. And I'm going to speak more on his attitude and demeanor, especially with the officiating in some games.
Yeah, good point.
That kind of is going to tarnish your legacy a little bit, because I'm not going to say that it was just a very negative. I'm not saying he's a crybaby, but it kind of was coming off as you're being a little bit of a crybaby. He's a great player. I'll give him that. But sometimes his attitude's going to get the best of him.
Kyrie Irving, when he got to Boston, of course the fans booed him every time he got the ball, especially in Game 5. Those boos were crazy loud. And it got to him. Clearly got to him. The games that he played in Boston versus the games that he played in Dallas, night and day. And you expect that from a younger player, from somebody whose nerves need to calm down. Kyrie, you're in your 30s, bro. These young kids, they're in their early 20s, some of them mid-20s. They're looking at you. You need to be the leader of this team. You need to be able to calm your nerves at this point in your life. Step up and lead this team to a championship. You did it in Cleveland. Your back was against the wall, and you took the biggest shot in your career. And yes, you obviously had LeBron James. You had some good pieces around you, but you were the key in that series, man. You needed to step up and do your thing. Now, Boston was the better team. I will accept that, and I know Kyrie is going to accept that too, but you can't play lackluster when you're going up against a team like this. I don't care if it's your former team. You need to be the one that they look at as the role model and the model of excellence in the series.
I am going to say that I think Kyrie has gotten a lot better than where he was many years ago. Because if you just listen to a lot of his press conferences and the way that he doesn't try to deflect and go around anything, and he is actually taking responsibility of what he did in his past. He's matured a lot. And while he should be a leader, but he is fine being that secondary player to Luka for this team, but it didn't work out in Boston. Obviously, he has matured and he knows and he understands that he should have done. Obviously, he should have done a whole lot of things differently. And the relationship that he had with LeBron, how he let things go in Brooklyn. But right now, I see Kyrie in a lot better light than I do Luka. It's just crazy to say that the tables have turned on my bias towards Luka to Kyrie, because just hearing a lot of the press conference and a lot of sound bites that we were getting, especially during the finals, I like a lot of what Kyrie had to say. And compared to what Luka was saying, and I don't know, I was disagreeing with you a little bit about where he is about being a leader. I think that he does enough to be a leader, but the offense runs through Luka. It's either you're going to set up, you're going to dish it out to Kyrie, or you're going to either set up and dish it out to Luka. It's pretty much what was going on. But majority of the time, Luka was taking more shots than it was going to be Kyrie. And Kyrie didn't have a great finals either. He was pretty much MIA for the first couple games. For a guy who has great handle, he was turning the ball over and making a couple mistakes as a veteran that you shouldn't be doing.
Jackson, I'm going to take us pretty far off topic for just a second. I have some unfortunate breaking news to announce. Willie Mays, the Say Hey Kid, passed away today. 93 years old. Started in the Negro Leagues for the Birmingham Black Barons. Played in major leagues for the New York and San Francisco Giants from 51 all the way to 72. The Mets 72 to 73. The man was, to say he was a legend would be to understate it. He was a 24-time All-Star. He did win the World Series back in 1954. Jackson, initial thoughts on the passing of the legend, Willie Mays?
It sucks whenever you see a lot of anyone's favorite ball players, idols, and just someone who has been well respected and appreciated in the league as much as Willie Mays has been. I would highly recommend, if you haven't seen it yet, it's a documentary on Max about Willie Mays. That's a really good watch. If you are up for you have any free time, I would highly recommend going and see that. But it's devastating, especially, the passing of Jerry West last week and Bill Walton just within the past month. It's never easy whenever you continue to lose people that have been huge staples in every single sport that they've ever participated in. It sucks.
Yeah, appreciate the legends while you have them. Willie Mays, such an inspiration to many, many people. Me living here in California, got a lot of friends that are San Francisco Giants fans, and I'm sure they're all just beyond devastated right now. Willie Mays passes away at the age of 93 today. Well, that's going to do it for us this week, ladies and gentlemen. Jackson, thank you so much for joining us on this special edition of the Circus Catch.
Thank you, Jordan. Happy to be here. Till next time.
Until next time, I could do without the hat, but to each their own. Down from the Houston area in Texas. Had to, man. I'm sorry. Down from Texas up to Montana and out here to California. We will see you guys soon. Sayonara. Are you giving me the silent treatment?